The billionaire pulled into the driveway earlier than usual, expecting quiet, maybe his wife reading by the fire, his adoptive mother resting after a long day. Instead, the front door stood slightly ajar, and sharp, venomous words sliced through the evening air. He froze on the threshold. There, in the grand foyer of the mansion he had built from nothing, his wife stood over the woman who had raised him when the world had thrown him away. The black woman who had taken in a scared, orphaned boy from Chicago's toughest streets, fed him dreams bigger than their tiny apartment, and loved him fiercely enough to make him believe he could become anything. Now she was on her knees, hands trembling, while his wife hurled insults laced with the kind of casual cruelty that only hides behind wealth and whiteness. Words that cut deeper than any slap. Words meant to erase her dignity, reduce her to nothing in the very home she had helped shape. He felt his chest tighten, the briefcase slipping from his fingers. In that frozen moment, everything he owed her flashed before him, the late-night talks, the sacrifices, the unbreakable bond that no money could buy. What his wife didn't know, what no one in their glittering circle suspected, was that the woman she was humiliating had once saved a broken child who grew into one of the most powerful men alive. And now that man was standing right behind her. What happened next would shatter their perfect world forever, and force a reckoning no one saw coming. Stay with me, this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about loyalty, hidden racism, and the moment truth demands justice. The billionaire's name was Alexander Hale, though the world knew him simply as Alex Hale, the self-made tech titan whose empire spanned AI, renewable energy, and global philanthropy. At 42, he had everything most people could only dream of, a sprawling estate outside Chicago, private jets on standby, and a net worth that placed him among the planet's elite. Yet none of it had come from inherited wealth or elite connections. It had come from grit, late nights coding in borrowed library corners, and one unbreakable constant in his life, Evelyn Carter. Evelyn was the black woman from Chicago's South Side who had changed everything. When Alex was 8, after years bouncing through foster homes, no one wanted to keep a troubled black boy from the projects. The system finally placed him with her. She wasn't rich, far from it. A single woman working double shifts as a nurse's aide, living in a cramped two-bedroom apartment that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and hope. But she saw something in the quiet, angry child others had written off. She fed him home-cooked meals when his stomach growled from neglect, stayed up helping with homework he pretended not to care about, and told him over and over that his mind was sharper than any street corner could dull. "You're going to build something bigger than this block, baby," she'd say, her voice steady even when the bills piled up. "And when you do, you remember who believed in you first." He did. Every milestone, first scholarship, first startup sold for millions, first billion, was quietly dedicated to her. When success finally arrived, Alex brought Evelyn out of that old apartment and into his world. He bought her a beautiful wing in the mansion, complete with a private garden she tended herself because she loved roses more than luxury. She never asked for anything, never acted entitled. She just kept being the steady presence he'd always needed. Making him tea when deals went south, listening without judgment, reminding him where he came from so he wouldn't lose himself in the glittering haze of wealth. His wife, Isabella, came later, sharp, ambitious, perfectly polished, the kind of woman who fit seamlessly into boardrooms and charity galas. She knew Alex's story in broad strokes, of course, it was part of his public narrative, the inspiring rags-to-riches tale investors loved. But she never quite warmed to Evelyn. Small things at first, a polite distance, subtle comments about how quaint the older woman's simple ways were, the way Isabella's smile tightened whenever Evelyn called Alex baby in front of guests. Alex chalked it up to cultural differences, to Isabella's privileged upbringing never having crossed paths with someone like Evelyn. He told himself love would bridge the gap. Most days, life hummed along smoothly. Alex traveled constantly, closing deals that shaped the future. Isabella managed their social calendar with precision. Evelyn quietly kept the heart of the home alive, watering plants, reading in the sunroom, occasionally cooking the soul food that still grounded him after years of Michelin-starred plates. But beneath the surface, something simmered. Isabella had begun to view Evelyn less as family and more as an inconvenient relic from Alex's past, a reminder of a life she preferred to keep hidden from their elite circle. The mansion was hers to curate, after all, pristine, modern, colorless in its perfection. And Evelyn, with her warm laugh and unapologetic blackness, didn't quite match the aesthetic. Alex never saw how deep that quiet resentment had grown. Until one ordinary Thursday, when a cancelled meeting sent him home hours earlier than planned. The driveway was empty except for Isabella's sleek white SUV. He smiled, thinking perhaps they'd share an unexpected afternoon together. He stepped through the front door, briefcase in hand, ready to call out. What he heard instead stopped him cold. Alex stood frozen in the doorway, the sharp echo of Isabella's voice slicing through the marble foyer like a blade. You think you belong here? Isabella hissed, her tone low and venomous, the way people speak when they believe no one important is listening. You think you can just sit in my house, touching my things, acting like your family? You're not. You're the help. And honestly, Evelyn, you're lucky we even let you stay. Evelyn knelt on the polished floor, hands pressed flat against the cool stone as if bracing herself against a storm. She didn't look up. She didn't speak. But Alex could see the slight tremble in her shoulders, the same tremble he'd seen when she'd worked double shifts and still made sure he had breakfast before school. Isabella paced slowly around her, heels clicking with deliberate menace. I've tolerated you for years because Alex has this sentimental attachment. But let's be real. You're a reminder of everything he's supposed to leave behind. The projects. The struggle. The kind of people who don't belong in our world. She stopped, leaning down slightly. You raised him, fine. But you don't get to claim him. Not anymore. And if I have to remind you of your place every single day until you finally leave, I will. Alex's blood turned to fire. Every word was a slap, not just to Evelyn, but to the boy he had been, the one Evelyn had shielded from a world that had already decided he was worthless. He wanted to burst in, to roar, to throw Isabella out of the house she thought she owned. But something held him back. He needed to hear how far this had gone. How long it had been happening behind his back. Isabella straightened, brushing invisible dust from her silk blouse. You know what's funny? I've seen the way you look at my guests. Like you're judging them. Like you think you're better because you saved him. She laughed, a cold, brittle sound. You didn't save him. Money saved him. I saved him. I gave him the life you could never dream of giving. So the next time you feel like cooking your little soul food dinner for the staff, remember, this is my kitchen. My house. My husband. Evelyn finally lifted her head. Her eyes were steady, glistening but unbroken. I never asked for your house, Isabella, she said quietly. I only asked to stay close to my boy. That's all. Your boy? Isabella's voice rose, sharp and mocking. He's not your boy. He's a billionaire. And you're just the maid who got lucky. She stepped closer, towering over Evelyn. Pack your things tonight. I want you gone by morning. Or I'll make sure every charity board, every gala, every journalist knows exactly what kind of family Alex really comes from. The air in the foyer thickened. Alex's hands clenched into fists so tight his knuckles ached. He could feel the pulse hammering in his throat. Evelyn's face, her beautiful, lined face that had smiled through every hardship, held no anger. Only quiet sorrow. The same look she'd worn when the foster agency tried to take him away again. The same look when she'd sold her mother's wedding ring to pay for his first computer. Isabella turned toward the grand staircase, satisfied, already mentally erasing Evelyn from the mansion's perfect picture. That's when Alex stepped forward. The sound of his shoe on the marble was soft, but it landed like thunder. Isabella froze mid-step. Evelyn's eyes widened, finding him in the shadows of the doorway. For one heartbeat, no one moved. Then Isabella spun around, her face shifting from triumph to shock to something colder, calculation. Alex, she said quickly, voice suddenly sweet. You're home early. This isn't what it looks like. Evelyn stayed on her knees, silent, watching her son. Alex's gaze locked on his wife. Then slowly, deliberately, he walked past her and knelt beside the woman who had raised him. He took both of Evelyn's trembling hands in his, helping her to her feet as if she were the most precious thing in the world. He looked up at Isabella, his voice low and steady, each word carrying the weight of a lifetime. You just told the only mother I've ever known to leave my house. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Get out. Isabella's mouth opened, but no sound came. Alex turned to Evelyn, his voice softening. I'm sorry, Mama. I didn't know. Evelyn touched his cheek gently, the way she had when he was 8 and scared of the dark. You know now, baby. And in that moment, the perfect facade of their glittering life cracked wide open, revealing the ugly truth that had been living beneath it all along. The mansion's grand foyer felt like a battlefield now. Shattered illusions scattered across the marble like broken glass. Alex held Evelyn close for a long moment, her familiar scent of lavender and home cutting through the chaos in his chest. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were blazing with something deeper than anger, clarity. The kind that comes when the last veil drops. Isabella hadn't left yet. She stood at the threshold of the double doors, one hand on the handle, the other clenched white-knuckled at her side. Her perfect posture had cracked, mascara tracked faint lines down her cheeks, but her voice still carried that polished edge. You really think this ends here? She said, low and dangerous. You think you can just discard me like one of your failed prototypes? I know things, Alex. About your deals. Your offshore accounts. The quiet favors you called in to get where you are. One call to the right reporter, and your saintly image crumbles. And her, she jabbed a finger toward Evelyn. She'll be the reason the world sees you as weak. As ungrateful. As just another angry black man who can't handle success. The words landed like poison darts. Alex felt Evelyn tense in his arms, but she didn't flinch. She never had. He released her gently and stepped forward, slow, deliberate, closing the distance until he was only feet from his soon-to-be ex-wife. You want to threaten me? His voice was calm, almost soft. Terrifying in its stillness. Go ahead. Leak whatever you think you have. Twist the story however it suits you. He leaned in slightly, eyes locked on hers. The racism. The entitlement. The casual cruelty you dressed up as boundaries. The world will see it. Not because I say so, because you'll keep talking. You always do. Isabella's breath hitched. For the first time, real fear flickered behind the fury. Alex continued, voice steady as steel. And when they ask why I chose the woman who raised me over the one who married me for status, I'll tell them the truth. Evelyn never asked me to be anything other than who I am. You asked me to forget who I was. He straightened. Now leave. Or I'll make sure the security footage from every camera in this house goes public. The audio too. Every word you said tonight. Every insult. Every threat. Isabella's face drained of color. She searched his eyes, for bluff, for mercy, and found neither. Without another word, she yanked the door open and stepped into the night. The slam this time felt final. Echoing. Irreversible. Alex turned back to Evelyn. She stood where he'd left her, hands clasped in front of her, tears shining but unshed. Pride and pain warred across her face. He crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees again, not in defeat, but in reverence. Mama, he said, voice breaking for the first time. I failed you. I let her make you feel small in the one place you should have felt safest. Evelyn cupped his face in both hands, thumbs brushing away the tears he hadn't realized were falling. No, baby, she whispered. You didn't fail me. You saw me. That's more than most ever get. But as they held each other in the wreckage of what had once been a perfect life, one truth hung heavy in the air. This confrontation wasn't the end. It was the spark. Because tomorrow, the story would spread, first in whispers among staff, then in headlines, then in courtrooms and boardrooms. And Alex knew, the real battle for justice, for truth, for the dignity Evelyn deserved, was only just beginning. Isabella was gone by morning, her things packed hastily, her name already being quietly removed from joint accounts and charity boards. The divorce papers arrived within the week, delivered by lawyers who spoke in careful, neutral tones. Alex didn't fight her threats, he didn't need to. The security footage never made it to the press, but the simple truth did, a man choosing the woman who raised him over the one who married him for status. Whispers turned to headlines. Headlines turned to conversations. Conversations turned to uncomfortable silences at galas where people once smiled too easily in his direction. Evelyn stayed. Not as a guest, not as the help, but as the heart of the home she had always been. Alex moved her into the main suite, the one with the best view of the rose garden she still tended every morning. They sat together on the terrace most evenings, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea, his around nothing but gratitude. She never asked for apologies again. She simply said, "You came home when it mattered, baby. That's enough." But the real change wasn't in the house. It was in Alex. He began speaking differently. Not louder, not angrier, just clearer. In boardrooms, he called out microaggressions that once slid past unnoticed. At fundraisers, he redirected donations toward organizations supporting Black families in foster care, the same system that had nearly broken him before Evelyn found him. He funded scholarships in her name. He told her story, not the polished, inspirational version, but the raw one, how even billionaires can be blind to the racism living under their own roof. The world didn't change overnight. Some called him ungrateful. Others accused him of playing the race card. But more listened. More reflected. More began asking the questions they'd avoided for years. Who do we let into our inner circles? Whose labor do we erase? Whose love do we take for granted until it's almost too late? Evelyn never sought the spotlight. She still preferred quiet mornings with her roses and the occasional plate of collards that filled the kitchen with memories. But when people asked her what it felt like to be saved by the son she raised, she always gave the same gentle answer, "I didn't save him. We saved each other." And sometimes, that's the only kind of rescue that matters. In the end, this wasn't a story about a billionaire losing his wife. It was a story about a son finally seeing his mother, truly seeing her, and refusing to let the world diminish her again. So here's the question we all have to face now. When the mask of politeness slips and the quiet racism in our own homes, our own circles, our own hearts is revealed, will we have the courage to stand up, to choose love over comfort, truth over convenience? Or will we keep pretending we didn't hear? The choice isn't just Alex's anymore. It's ours. If this story touched you, if it made you uncomfortable, angry, hopeful, don't just watch. Reflect. Talk about it. Share it. Because the reckoning doesn't start in mansions. It starts wherever we decide to stop looking away.